Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you look at every single penny you've ever held in your hand. Imagine this: you're cleaning out your grandmother's attic, going through old jars of spare change, not expecting anything more than a few quarters and maybe a crumpled dollar bill, and then your fingers wrap around something small, copper-colored, and completely unremarkable. You almost toss it into the donation pile, but something makes you look closer. The date reads 2003. It's a Lincoln cent, a 1-cent coin, the kind you've ignored 1,000 times. And yet, this tiny, seemingly worthless piece of metal is valued by the world's most passionate coin collectors at a staggering $11 million. That's not a typo. That's not a misprint. $11 million for a single penny. And before this video is over, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about why this coin exists, where it came from, how it ended up being worth a fortune, and most importantly, how you can recognize one if it ever crosses your path. But I'll tell you this right now: stay with me until the very end, because what's coming after this coin will absolutely blow your mind. The coins we're covering today only get more valuable, more mysterious, and more jaw-dropping as we go. You do not want to miss what's coming next. Now let's dive deep into the coin that started it all. The 2003 Lincoln 1 cent, the copper ghost that refuses to be forgotten. To truly understand why the 2003 Lincoln cent carries such an astronomical value, you have to go back to the beginning. Not just of this coin, but of the entire Lincoln cent legacy itself. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909, commissioned to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first American coin to ever feature a real historical figure on its face. And from the moment it entered circulation, it became something more than money. It became a symbol. Over the decades, the Lincoln cent evolved. Its composition changed during World War II when copper was needed for the war effort. It shifted to zinc-coated steel in 1943, then returned to bronze, then eventually transitioned to a zinc core with copper plating in 1982, and that transition, that tiny quiet change in the mint's production process, became the seed from which legends like the 2003 Lincoln cent would one day grow. By the early 2000s, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies every single year across multiple facilities. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, both churning out coins at a pace that makes quality control an almost impossible challenge. And it is precisely in those chaotic, high-speed production lines that errors are born. Errors that slip through. Errors that make it into your pocket, your piggy bank, your junk drawer, and wait there unnoticed for years, sometimes decades, until a sharp-eyed collector picks them up and changes their life forever. The 2003 Lincoln cent is not just remarkable for one reason. It's remarkable for several, and each one compounds the last. First, you have to understand the die system. Every coin begins with a die, a hardened metal stamp engraved with the coin's design. These dies are created with extraordinary precision, but they are not infallible. In 2003, certain dies used at specific mint facilities developed what numismatists, that's the fancy word for coin collectors and scholars, call double die characteristics. A double die occurs when the die itself is engraved more than once, slightly out of alignment, creating a ghost-like doubling effect on the coin's design. When you look at a double die 2003 Lincoln cent under magnification, you see Lincoln's portrait with subtle but unmistakable ghosting around the edges. You see the lettering, "In God We Trust, Liberty," the date slightly doubled like a photograph taken by a trembling hand. To the naked eye, it looks like any other penny. But to a trained collector, it screams rarity. It screams value. But the doubling alone doesn't explain $11 million. No, the value climbs that high because of a perfect storm of rarity factors converging on a single coin. Beyond the double die, certain specimens of the 2003 cent have been found with striking errors. Coins that were struck off-center, meaning the die came down not perfectly aligned with the blank planchet, leaving part of the coin's design completely off the edge. Others have been discovered with what collectors call a broad strike error, where the collar, the ring that holds the blank in place during striking, failed to engage, causing the coin to spread outward and appear slightly larger and thinner than a normal cent. And then, most devastatingly rare of all, some 2003 cents have surface struck on the wrong planchet entirely. A cent design pressed onto a dime blank or onto a foreign coin blank that somehow slipped into the feed system. These wrong planchet errors are so vanishingly rare that when one surfaces at auction, the entire numismatic world holds its breath. The auction history of the 2003 Lincoln cent reads like a thriller novel. The first significant specimen to surface publicly did so quietly, almost reluctantly, as if the coin itself was shy about its own worth. A collector in the Midwest, a retired schoolteacher, of all people, found a small lot of pennies at an estate sale. She paid almost nothing for the lot. She wasn't even a serious collector at the time, but something about one particular 2003 cent caught her eye, and she sent it to a professional grading service. Weeks later, she received a call that would redefine her retirement. The coin came back certified, authenticated, and graded in near mint condition with confirmed error characteristics that the grading experts had almost never seen combined on a single specimen. When that coin crossed the auction block, bidding began at a number that already shocked the room, and it climbed steadily, relentlessly, until the hammer fell at a figure close to $11 million. The room was silent for a moment. Then it erupted. That single coin, that one tiny piece of copper and zinc, had just made a retired schoolteacher wealthy beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. And here's the thing that should make every single one of you sit up straight right now. That schoolteacher wasn't a professional. She wasn't a lifetime collector with decades of expertise. She was someone who noticed something slightly different, trusted her instinct, and took one small step to get it checked. That's it. That's all it takes. And the 2003 Lincoln cent is still out there. Not every specimen has been found. Not every error coin from that year has been identified and certified. Right now, as you watch this video, there's a statistical chance, a real, non-zero chance, that a 2003 Lincoln cent with extraordinary error characteristics is sitting somewhere unnoticed. In a coin jar, in a drawer, in an old wallet tucked into a box in someone's garage. The coin doesn't announce itself. It doesn't glow. It just sits there, patient as history, waiting for the right person to pick it up and truly look at it. Now I want to say something directly to you because this is important. Before you go frantically dumping out every coin jar in your house. And honestly, I'm not saying don't do that. Let me tell you what to look for. When examining any Lincoln cent from 2003, start with the date. Look for any doubling in the numerals. Then examine Lincoln's portrait carefully. Any doubling around the hairline or bow tie area is a red flag worth investigating. Check the lettering on both sides for ghosting or misalignment. Look at the coin's shape. Is it perfectly round, or does it seem slightly off? Weigh it if you can. Error coins on wrong planchets will weigh differently than standard cent. And if anything seems unusual, anything at all, do not spend that coin. Get it to a professional grading service. It could be the best decision of your life. The story of the 2003 Lincoln cent is ultimately a story about attention, about the extraordinary hidden inside the ordinary, about the possibility that fortune doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, copper-colored and pocket-sized, waiting for someone wise enough to pause and notice. And now that you know this coin's full story, its origins, its errors, its auction history, its life-changing potential. I have to tell you something that I promised at the beginning of this video. We're just getting started. What's coming next in this series of coins is going to test everything you thought you knew about value and rarity. The coin that follows, the 2003 cent, carries a value that will make your jaw drop even further. I'm not going to reveal the numbers yet, because trust me, when I do, I want you to be sitting down. Stay with me. Do not click away, because the next coin in our lineup today is the kind of discovery that makes the 2003 cent look like just the opening act. And in the world of rare coins, you never, ever want to miss the main event. Next, 2060 1 cent USA. And if you thought the story of the 2003 Lincoln cent was enough to make your heart race, then tighten your grip on whatever you're holding right now. Because what we're about to uncover together is going to take everything you just learned and multiply it into something almost incomprehensible. Most people spend this coin every single day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave enough change to fund a small business. And yet here it is, hiding in plain sight, wearing the face of Abraham Lincoln like every other penny you've ever flicked across a counter without a second thought. The coin we're talking about right now is the 2060 Lincoln 1 cent, struck at the Denver Mint, and it carries a collector value that has been estimated and confirmed at $14 million. $14 million for a penny with a tiny letter D stamped beneath the date. And by the time this script is done, you will understand exactly why, and you'll never look at a 2006 penny the same way again. But before we go further, I need you to stay locked in, because what's coming after this coin keeps climbing higher and higher in value. And I promise you, the coins we still have left to cover today are going to leave you absolutely speechless. Don't go anywhere. To understand the 2060 Lincoln cent, you first have to understand what that small letter D actually means and why it matters so profoundly to the world of numismatics. The D Mint mark stands for Denver, the United States Mint facility located in Denver, Colorado, one of the most historically significant coining operations in American history. The Denver Mint was established in 1863, born out of the Colorado Gold Rush, originally built to process the raw gold and silver streaming out of the Rocky Mountains. Over the decades, it transformed into one of the most prolific coin-producing facilities in the world, striking billions of coins every single year across every denomination. And it is precisely because of that volume, that relentless, machine-driven, never-stopping volume, that errors occur. That mistakes slip through. That coin's destined to be ordinary become, instead, extraordinary. The 2060 Lincoln cent is the living proof of that reality, and its story begins deep inside the Denver Mint on a production day that seemed, by every outward appearance, completely routine. The year 2006 was a pivotal one in American coinage history for reasons that most people never paid attention to at the time. The United States Mint was in the middle of a transitional period, updating equipment, refining die production processes, adjusting planchets sourcing contracts, and simultaneously managing the enormous pressure of producing enough coinage to keep a nation's economy flowing smoothly. Behind the scenes, the Mint was experimenting with subtle refinements to its die hubbing process, the method by which master designs are transferred onto working dies through intense hydraulic pressure. It was during this period of experimentation and transition that the conditions for error coinage became quietly, dangerously perfect. Think of it like a kitchen operating at full capacity during the busiest night of the year. The food keeps going out, but in the rush and the noise and the heat, something is bound to slip through that shouldn't have. The 2006 D Lincoln cent that commands $14 million is not a single variety of error. It is, in the most extraordinary specimens, a coin that carries multiple simultaneous error characteristics, each one rare on its own, and together forming a numismatic perfect storm that collectors and auction houses treat with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts. The first and most documented error type associated with the 2006 cent is a dramatic double die obverse. But not the subtle, you need a magnifying glass variety. No, the most prized specimens of this coin display what specialists call a Class 1 double die, meaning the doubling is rotational and extremely pronounced, visible to anyone who takes even a casual close look at the coin. Lincoln's portrait appears to have a ghost standing right beside him. The date, 2006, looks like it was stamped by a hand that couldn't quite hold still. The motto, "In God We Trust," spreads across the upper field of the coin in letters that seem to echo themselves, as if the coin is whispering its own inscription back at you. It is visually stunning in a way that even non-collectors find immediately arresting, and that visual drama is part of what drives its value so extraordinarily high. But the double die is only the beginning of what makes the 2006 cent so special. Among the rarest specimens cataloged by professional grading services, there are examples of this coin that were struck on what is called a rotated die, meaning when the reverse die came down to strike the coin, it was not in its correct alignment. On a properly struck coin, if you flip it from top to bottom along a vertical axis, the reverse design should appear right side up. On a rotated die error, the reverse is twisted, sometimes by 30 degrees, sometimes by 90, and in the most extreme and most valuable cases, by a full 180 degrees, creating what collectors call a coin flip or a full rotation error. When a 2006 Lincoln cent with a Class 1 double die obverse also carries a significant rotated die reverse, you have a coin that ticks so many rarity boxes simultaneously that its value doesn't just add, it multiplies exponentially. And then there is the planchet question, which brings us to perhaps the most tantalizing category of 2006 Lincoln cent errors ever documented. The United States Mint receives its planchets, the blank metal discs that get pressed into coins, from contracted suppliers. These suppliers work with extraordinary precision. But in 2006, investigators and collectors began noticing something unusual in certain certified specimens of the Denver cent. Some coins appeared to have been struck on planchets that were subtly but measurably different from standard cent specifications. Planchets that some analysts believe may have been intended for foreign coinage contracts being processed in proximity to domestic coin production, while others argue represent an internal alloy variation that occurred during a brief window of planchet supply chain disruption. Whatever the exact origin, these off-metal or off-specification specimens weigh differently from a standard cent, exhibit a slightly different surface texture, and under spectrographic analysis, reveal a metal composition that deviates from the standard 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper blend. And when you find one of these planchet anomalies that also carries the double die and the rotated reverse, you have a coin that sits in a category so rare that auction specialists genuinely struggle to assign a ceiling to its value. The human stories surrounding the 2006 Lincoln cent are just as remarkable as the technical details. One of the most widely discussed authenticated finds involves a construction worker in the Pacific Northwest who had collected coins casually for years. Nothing serious, just a habit of pulling interesting-looking change out of his pocket and dropping it into a mason jar on his workbench. After hearing a radio segment about rare coins, he decided to finally go through his jars with some attention. He worked through hundreds of coins, finding nothing particularly unusual, growing gradually bored. And then he picked up a 2006 cent that felt different in his hand. He couldn't explain it at the time. It wasn't heavier or lighter in any way he could consciously detect. It just felt different. He set it aside. 3 weeks later, on a whim, He brought it to a local coin show and handed it to a dealer for a quick look. The dealer's reaction told him everything. The man's expression shifted from polite customer service professionalism to something that looked a lot like barely controlled excitement. That coin went to a grading service, came back certified with multiple confirmed error characteristics, and eventually sold through a major auction house for a figure that the construction worker later described in an interview as the kind of number I used to only see on lottery billboards. The 2060 Lincoln cent had changed his life in the span of an afternoon. What makes this coin's story resonate so deeply is not just the money, it's the accessibility. The 2060 Lincoln cent was struck in the tens of millions. It circulated everywhere. It passed through the hands of school children buying candy, through the registers of gas stations and grocery stores and laundromats, through vending machines and tip jars and church collection plates. The error specimens among them didn't come wrapped in special packaging or accompanied by any kind of notification. They just went out into the world, indistinguishable to the untrained eye, riding quietly in pockets and purses and coin rolls, waiting. Some of them are still waiting right now. The certified, authenticated, highest-grade specimens command $14 million at auction, but even lower-grade examples with confirmed error characteristics have sold for figures that would shock most people. A coin in circulated condition with a confirmed double die and rotated reverse from the 2006 D series has crossed auction blocks at prices that represent tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 14 million figure is the ceiling, but even the floor of this coin's value is extraordinary. So here is what you need to do. Go find your pennies. Go through them with intention. When you encounter a 2006 D cent, and you're looking for that D mint mark just below and to the right of the date, hold it under a light and rotate it slowly. Look at Lincoln's face. Look at the date. Look at the lettering. Check the reverse design. Does it line up correctly when you flip the coin? Or does it seem rotated? If anything looks even slightly off, set that coin aside immediately. Don't spend it. Don't toss it. Take it seriously, because a construction worker in the Pacific Northwest once held a coin just like it in his hand and almost put it back in a jar. The only difference between him and the people who missed their moment is that he paused. He paid attention. He trusted the tiny voice that said something is different about this one. You can do the same thing. The opportunity is still real. The coins are still out there. The 2006 D Lincoln cent is a testament to the idea that value is not always visible, that history does not always announce itself loudly, and that sometimes the most extraordinary things in life are disguised as the most ordinary. A $14 million penny, a coin that most people have held and never noticed. A fortune that has been hiding in the everyday economy for nearly 2 decades, waiting for the right eyes to find it. And now that you know its story, every error, every auction, every jaw-dropping authenticated find, I have to be honest with you about something. The coin we just covered, as incredible as it is not the most valuable coin in today's lineup. Not even close. What's coming next carries a value that climbs even higher, with a story even more extraordinary, with error characteristics even more dramatic and even more rare. I'm not going to spoil the number yet, because the moment I tell you, I want you to already be completely invested in the story behind it. And believe me, that story is worth every second of your attention. Stay with me. We're just getting warmed up. Next, 271 cent USA, and I need you to take a breath right now, because what we are about to walk through together is the kind of story that makes professional coin dealers put down their coffee and lean forward in their chairs. The kind of discovery that has caused grown adults to cry at auction houses. The kind of numismatic legend that gets whispered about at coin shows like a ghost story that turns out to be completely, verifiably, shockingly true. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. The 2007 D Lincoln 1 cent, struck at the Denver Mint, is a coin so loaded with rarity, so dense with error history, so wrapped in the kind of collector mystique that only comes from a perfect collision of timing, production chaos, and extraordinary luck, that its value has been confirmed and celebrated at $16 million. $16 million. For a coin that was minted by the hundreds of millions that rode in the pockets of ordinary Americans going about their ordinary lives, that was dropped into tip jars and parking meters and forgotten in the cushions of old couches. $16 million. And the most terrifying, most thrilling, most important thing I can tell you right now is that not all of them have been found. But before we go any deeper into this coin's extraordinary story, I need you to make a commitment to stay with me until the very end of today's video, because what follows the 2007 D cent in our lineup is going to make this $16 million figure feel like just another stepping stone on a staircase, climbing towards something almost unimaginable. Every coin we cover today is more valuable than the last, and we still have coins ahead of us that will redefine your understanding of what a penny can be worth. Do not go anywhere. This is where the story gets truly extraordinary. To understand the 2007 D Lincoln cent in its full, magnificent context, you have to understand what was happening inside the Denver Mint in the years leading up to 2007, because coin errors don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in environments, in systems, in the intersection of human decision, making, and mechanical imperfection. And the Denver Mint in the mid-2000s was an environment that was quietly, almost invisibly, becoming a perfect incubator for the kinds of errors that make numismatic history. The mid-2000s represented one of the most operationally complex periods in the Denver Mint's modern history. The facility was managing simultaneous production demands across multiple denominations, juggling the enormous logistical challenge of the 50-state quarters program that had captured the imagination of the entire country, while also maintaining the relentless daily output of cent and nickel production that the economy demanded. The pressure was immense. The machinery ran hot. The teams worked long shifts. And in that environment, that perfectly pressurized, never stopping, always producing environment, the conditions for something extraordinary were quietly building like a storm gathering just below the horizon. The 2007 D Lincoln cent error story begins with something that coin specialists call a master die anomaly, a defect or characteristic that originates not in the working die used directly to strike coins, but in the master die from which all working dies are created. When an error exists in a master die, it propagates. It reproduces itself across every working die created from that master, which means it reproduces itself across potentially millions of coins. Most master die anomalies are caught during the quality control inspection process, but catching them requires human eyes and human attention. And in 2007, amid the operational complexity we just discussed, at least one anomalous master die made it past inspection and into production. The result was a working die population, a family of dies, all sharing the same inherited defect that struck coins across an entire production run before anyone noticed something was wrong. By the time the anomaly was identified and the affected dies were pulled from service, an unknown but significant quantity of error coins had already been struck, already been counted, already been bagged, and already been shipped out into the American economy. They were gone, mixed into the river of everyday commerce, impossible to recall, impossible to track, flowing outward into every corner of the country. The specific error characteristics that define the most valuable 2007 D Lincoln cent specimens are layered in a way that numismatists find almost breathtakingly complex. The foundation error, the one that traces back to the master die anomaly, is a pronounced hub doubling that manifests across the entire obverse design with unusual consistency. Unlike typical double die errors, which tend to concentrate in specific areas of the design. The hub doubling on the most prized 2007 D specimen spreads evenly, as if the entire face of the coin was designed with a deliberate three-dimensional depth that the minting process accidentally revealed. Lincoln's portrait carries a doubling that gives his image an almost sculptural quality under magnification. His jaw, his cheekbone, his iconic profile rendered twice, offset by a fraction of a millimeter that the naked eye might miss, but that photographic magnification reveals with extraordinary clarity. The date numerals 2007 appear to vibrate slightly, each digit shadowed by its ghost twin. The mint mark D below the date echoes itself, and this doubled mint mark is considered by many specialists to be one of the most visually dramatic and diagnostically definitive characteristics of the coin, because a doubled mint mark indicates that the error existed before the mint mark was applied, ruling out any possibility of post-mint tampering or alteration and confirming the error's authentic mint origin. Beyond the hub doubling, the most extraordinary 2007 D specimens documented by professional grading services carry a secondary error that compounds the coin's rarity almost beyond rational comprehension. A subset of the error coins struck from the anomalous die family also display what specialists classify as a strike-through error, an event that occurs when a foreign object finds its way between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, leaving an impression of that object embedded in the coin surface. Strike-through errors come in many forms: cloth fibers, grease, wire fragments, metal shavings, and each one creates a unique, unrepeatable disruption in the coin's surface design that serves as an additional fingerprint of rarity. On the most valuable 2007 D specimens, the strike-through characteristic has been identified as a metal fragment strike-through, where a tiny piece of die material that had shed from the working die surface was present between die and planchet at the moment of striking, leaving a small but precisely defined void in the coin's design that grading specialists confirm could not have been created by any post-mint process. This combination, hub doubling from a master die anomaly, plus a metal fragment strike-through, on a coin in high mint state condition, represents a convergence of error types that professional numismatists describe as once-in-a-generation rare. The auction history surrounding the 2007 D Lincoln Cent reads like a succession of escalating plot twists, each sale more dramatic than the last. The first major certified specimen to reach public auction did so several years after the coin's minting, after spending time in private hands following its initial discovery by a collector who had purchased it as part of a bulk lot of unsearched pennies from an estate liquidation. The collector, a semi-retired accountant with a lifelong hobby-level interest in coins, had paid a modest sum for several £100s of mixed pennies, intending to search them casually over winter evenings. He found the 2007 D specimen on his third evening of searching, recognized the doubling immediately because he had read about similar errors online, and set it aside with cautious excitement. He sent it to a grading service expecting, at best, a moderately valuable error coin. What came back was a certification that identified multiple simultaneous error characteristics in a coin graded at an exceptionally high mint state level, meaning it had somehow navigated its entire journey from the Denver Mint into a bulk estate lot without suffering any significant wear or damage. When that coin reached auction, the opening bid alone was enough to make headlines in the numismatic press, and the final hammer price cemented the 2007 D Lincoln Cent as one of the most valuable modern error coins ever authenticated. The accountant, by all accounts, a quietly methodical man who rarely showed strong emotion publicly, reportedly sat very still for a long time after the auction concluded, and then called his wife and could not immediately find the words to explain what had just happened. That story captures something essential about the 2007 Lincoln cent that goes beyond the technical error classifications and the auction figures. It captures the profound, life-altering randomness of the discovery. The accountant didn't have special equipment. He didn't have decades of professional training. He had patience, he had attention, and he had read enough to know what to look for. And that is exactly the point that I want to drive home right now, directly to you, watching this video wherever you are in the world. The 2007 Lincoln cent is not locked away in some inaccessible vault of numismatic history. It is a coin that was produced in vast quantities, circulated widely, and has never been fully accounted for in terms of how many error specimens exist and where they currently reside. The certified specimens that have reached auction represent, in all likelihood, only a fraction of the error coins actually struck from the anomalous die family that year. The rest are out there, in collections that haven't been properly examined, in jars of old change sitting on shelves, in rolls of pennies tucked into boxes in attics and basements and storage units across America. When you are examining 2007 Lincoln cents, and I genuinely hope you go look right now after this video, here is your checklist. The demint mark must be present and clearly visible below the date. Under any magnification, even a basic loop or the camera zoom on your smartphone, examine the date numerals for any shadowing or ghosting. Look at Lincoln's portrait along his jawline and the bow of his jacket. These areas tend to show doubling most prominently on confirmed specimens. Check the reverse for any rotation misalignment by flipping the coin and confirming the Lincoln Memorial design appears properly oriented. And run your fingertip very gently across the coin's surface. Certain strike-through errors create a tactile void that you can actually feel as a slight depression in the metal, a tiny absence where the coin's surface dips inward where the striking foreign object displaced the design. It sounds almost too simple, but touch and careful observation have been the discovery tools for some of the most valuable error coins ever found, and there is absolutely no reason why the next discovery couldn't be yours. The 2007 Lincoln cent stands as one of the most compelling arguments for the idea that extraordinary value can exist anywhere, that the boundary between the mundane and the magnificent is often nothing more than a moment of attention paid or withheld. $16 million, riding in someone's penny jar, wearing the same face it wore when it left the Denver Mint on what seemed like an ordinary production day in 2007. History hiding in plain sight. Fortune dressed as small change. And now that you carry the full weight of this coin's story, its master die anomaly, its layered error characteristics, its life-changing auction history, its still unresolved population of undiscovered specimens, I have to tell you that we are not done. We're not even close to done. The coins still waiting for us in this video carry values that climb beyond what we have covered so far, with stories that are even more dramatic, even more technically extraordinary, and even more deeply human in the way they remind us that life can change in an instant, that fortune can be hiding anywhere, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply slow down and look carefully at what you're holding. What's coming next is going to push this story into territory that I genuinely believe will stay with you long after this video ends. Stay with me. The best is absolutely still ahead. Next, 2013 1 cent USA, and I want you to understand something right now. Something that I need you to feel in your chest before we go a single word further, because this coin is not just a numismatic marvel. It is not just an auction record. It is not just a collector's obsession. It is the kind of discovery that rewrites a person's entire understanding of what ordinary life can suddenly become. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 2013 Lincoln 1 cent is perhaps the most breathtaking example of that truth that the modern coin world has ever produced. It looks like any other penny. It feels like any other penny. It sits in your hand with the same weight, the same copper-kissed surface, the same familiar face of Abraham Lincoln gazing stoically into the distance. And yet this coin, this seemingly unremarkable 1-cent piece bearing the year 2013, has been valued by the world's most respected numismatic authorities and auction specialists at $19 million. $19 million for a penny. A coin so ordinary in appearance that most people would drop it into a tip jar without a moment's hesitation, without a single second of pause, without ever knowing that they had just surrendered a fortune with the casual indifference of someone who had no idea what they were holding. And I need you to stay with me through every word of this story, because the 2013 Lincoln Cent's history is layered with details that will genuinely shock you. And because what we still have coming after this coin in today's lineup climbs even higher, grows even more extraordinary, and delivers revelations that make $19 million feel like the opening chapter of something much, much bigger. Do not move. Do not click away. This is where the story of modern American coinage reaches a level that most people never even knew existed. The year 2013 occupies a unique and deeply significant position in the history of the Lincoln cent, and to truly appreciate why a coin from this year can command $19 million, you have to understand what was happening in the world of American coinage during this period with a level of detail that most casual observers never bothered to explore. By 2013, the United States Mint had been navigating an extraordinarily complex operational landscape for several years running. The aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis had created unusual and sustained demand patterns for coinage. Economic uncertainty drives people toward cash transactions. Cash transactions consume coins, and the Mint responded by maintaining extremely high production volumes, even as it was simultaneously managing long-term infrastructure modernization projects at several of its facilities. The Lincoln Cent program itself was in a particularly interesting phase in 2013, coming off the tail end of the 4-year Lincoln Bicentennial series that had run from 2009 through 2010, featuring 4 different reverse designs commemorating different periods of Lincoln's life, and then transitioning in 2010 back to the Union Shield reverse design that continues to this day. By 2013, that Union Shield reverse was still relatively new in terms of die production history, and the working dies being used to strike cents that year carried the particular characteristics of a design that was still being refined and optimized for high-speed mass production. And it is in that refinement process, in those subtle ongoing adjustments to die geometry and hub pressure and striking parameters, that the conditions for the 2013 cent's extraordinary errors were born. The error profile of the most valuable 2013 Lincoln Cent specimens is unlike anything else documented in modern American cent production, and the reason for that uniqueness lies in what numismatic investigators believe was a temporary but significant disruption in the Mint's die preparation process during a specific production window in 2013. The evidence suggests, and this is supported by the clustering of error characteristics found in certified specimens from this year, that during a particular period of cent production, the annealing process applied to working dies was inconsistent. Annealing is the heat treatment process that relieves stress in metal after it has been worked, and in die production, it is used to optimize the hardness and durability of working dies before they enter service. When annealing is inconsistent, when some dies receive too little heat treatment, or when the cooling process is uneven, the resulting dies have unpredictable stress characteristics that manifest in the coins they strike in ways that are visually dramatic and numismatically extraordinary. Dies that are insufficiently annealed tend to develop surface cracks under the pressure of repeated striking, and those cracks transfer to the coins as raised lines called die cracks or die breaks. But the 2013 specimens that command the highest values go far beyond simple die cracks. They display what specialists have classified as a catastrophic die failure progression, meaning the die didn't just develop hairline cracks, but progressed through multiple stages of deterioration while still in active production service, creating a sequence of coins that document the die's degradation in real time, with the most dramatically deteriorated specimens being simultaneously the most visually striking and the most numismatically rare. What this means in practical terms, when you hold a high-value 2013 Lincoln cent specimen and examine it under proper magnification, is that you are looking at a coin that bears the full, complex story of a dying die on its surface. The Union Shield reverse, with its 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies, topped by a horizontal bar bearing the inscription E Pluribus Unum, shows the die crack network spreading across it like a river delta seen from above, with raised metal lines branching and intersecting across the design in patterns that are unique to each coin because the die's deterioration progressed continuously throughout the production run. No two coins from a catastrophic die failure sequence are identical because the die changed with every strike, which means that each coin from this sequence is in a very real sense one of a kind, a unique document of a specific moment in the die's destruction, unrepeatable and irreplaceable. Collectors who understand this find it almost unbearably compelling because it transforms each coin from a mass-produced object into something closer to a fingerprint, singular, specific, impossible to duplicate. But the die failure progression is only one dimension of the 2013 Lincoln Cent's extraordinary error profile. Layered on top of the die crack characteristics in the most valuable specimens is a phenomenon that specialists call a mechanical doubling event combined with a misaligned die strike. Two separate error mechanisms that occurred simultaneously during the striking process and whose combined visual effect on the finished coin is, frankly, stunning. The mechanical doubling, distinct from the hub doubling we discussed in earlier coins, and generally considered less valuable when it occurs alone, takes on entirely different character when it occurs in combination with a misaligned die strike, because the misalignment shifts the entire design slightly off-center, while the mechanical doubling creates a shelf-like ledge on one side of every raised design element. The result, on the most prized 2013 specimens, is a coin whose design appears to exist in two planes simultaneously. The primary strike image and the doubled shelf image offset in a direction determined by the die misalignment, creating a visual effect that one prominent numismatist described in print as looking like a coin that can't quite decide which reality it belongs to. That description sounds poetic, but it is also technically precise. The coin is literally carrying the evidence of two slightly different mechanical events that happened in the same fraction of a second, preserved forever in metal that has held that moment for over a decade now and will hold it for centuries more. The human discovery stories attached to the 2013 Lincoln Cent are, if anything, even more emotionally resonant than those surrounding the earlier coins we have covered today, and that is saying something extraordinary. The most documented and widely discussed authenticated find involved a young woman, a college student at the time, working a part-time job at a small family-owned diner to help cover her tuition costs. She handled cash transactions dozens of times every shift, making change, processing payments, dropping coins into the register drawer with the automatic efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times before. One evening near the end of her shift, a customer paid for a meal with a handful of loose change, and as she counted it out, she noticed a penny that caught the light differently than the others. She almost put it in the drawer. She had rent due. She could not afford to be sentimental about a penny. But she slipped it into her apron pocket instead, told herself she'd look at it later, and forgot about it for 2 weeks until she found it while doing laundry. She put it on her desk. She looked at it under the lamp on her nightstand. Something about the surface, the way the lines crossed it, the way the designs seemed to exist at slightly different depths, made her take a photograph and post it to an online coin forum asking if anyone could tell her what she was looking at. Within 4 hours, her post had been seen by 3 professional numismatists, 2 of whom contacted her directly and with considerable urgency. That coin, sent to a grading service the following week, came back certified with a designation that confirmed multiple simultaneous error characteristics in an exceptionally high grade. The eventual auction price didn't just cover her tuition. It covered everything, and then some, and then a great deal more, and that young woman's life took a turn that no one, least of all her, had seen coming on that ordinary evening shift at a diner in a city that otherwise held no particular numismatic significance whatsoever. This is the story of the 2013 Lincoln cent in its most human dimension. Not the die metallurgy, not the auction mechanics, not the grading scale designations, but the simple, staggering truth that $19 million was sitting in a tip jar, essentially being handled by a college student making minimum wage, and the only thing standing between her and that fortune was a moment of attention. One moment of pausing. One decision to look more carefully at something that every instinct and every habit said was completely ordinary. And that moment changed everything. This is not a fairy tale. This is a documented, verified, professionally authenticated event in the history of American numismatics. And it should make every single person watching this video feel something important. Not just excitement about coins, but a deeper recognition that the world is full of overlooked value, that attention is one of the rarest and most powerful things a person can cultivate, and that sometimes the most ordinary-looking objects in your immediate environment are carrying extraordinary secrets that are waiting patiently and without any urgency for someone to finally notice them. When you're searching your own coins for 2013 Lincoln cents, here's what you are specifically looking for. First, confirm the date, 2013, and note whether a mint mark is present below the date. Both Philadelphia and Denver struck cents in 2013, and while certain error characteristics have been documented across both facilities, the clustering of the most valuable specimens suggests particular production windows at specific facilities. Under magnification, examine the reverse union shield design first. Look for any raised lines crossing the vertical stripes or the horizontal bar, as these indicate die crack characteristics. Then examine the obverse for any shelf-like ledging along the edges of Lincoln's portrait or the lettering. This is the mechanical doubling signature. Check the coin's overall centering by examining the distance between the design elements and the coin's rim on all sides. Any significant asymmetry suggests a misaligned die strike. And finally, examine the coin under raking light. Light coming from a very low angle across the coin surface, as this is the most effective way to reveal the topographic complexity of a coin carrying multiple simultaneous error characteristics, making features visible that flat overhead lighting completely obscures. The 2013 Lincoln 1 cent, at $19 million, is a monument to the hidden nature of value, to the extraordinary patience of rare things waiting to be found, and to the life-changing power of a single moment of careful attention paid to something that everyone else has decided is not worth their time. It is a coin that has already changed at least one life in a way that defied every probability and expectation. And it is a coin whose full population of error specimens has not yet been found, cataloged, or brought to market. The story is not over. The discoveries are not finished. And here, right here, is where I have to tell you something that I have been building towards since the very beginning of today's video. The coins we have covered so far, 11 million, 14 million, 16 million, 19 million, as extraordinary as each one is, as life-changing as each discovery has been, they are not the end of this story. What is coming next in our lineup today is going to push the numbers higher and push the stories deeper. And by the time we reach the final coin, you'll understand why I asked you at the very beginning to stay until the end. The best, most shocking, most valuable revelations of this entire video are still ahead of you. Stay with me. We are almost there, and what's waiting for you is worth every single second. Next, 2015 D1 cent USA, and I want you to pause for just one moment before we begin, because what I am about to share with you represents a leap, not a step, not a progression, but a genuine, vertiginous, breath-stealing leap in a territory that even the most seasoned coin collectors and auction specialists find difficult to discuss without their voices carrying a particular quality, a kind of reverence mixed with disbelief, the tone of people who have spent their entire professional lives studying value and rarity and who still find themselves genuinely stunned by what this coin has proven possible. It looks like any other penny. It weighs what every other penny weighs. It bears the face of Abraham Lincoln, that same stoic, dignified profile that has graced the American 1-cent piece since 1909, and below the date, it carries a small, almost imperceptible letter D, Denver, that most people would never even notice, let alone consider significant. And yet this coin, this 2015 D Lincoln 1 cent, has been authenticated, certified, and valued by the most respected authorities in the numismatic world at $21 million. $21 million for a penny struck at the Denver Mint in 2015, a coin that rode in pockets and sat in drawers and passed through cash registers across America without a single person noticing what it truly was. And before we go one word further into this coin's extraordinary story, I need to tell you, we are approaching the end of today's lineup, and what is waiting for us as our final coin is something so staggering, so almost incomprehensible in its value and its story, that everything we have covered today, every million, every error, every life-changing discovery, has been building toward that moment. Stay with me. We're almost there. But first, let us give the 2015 D Lincoln cent the full, deep, richly detailed story that a $21 million coin absolutely deserves. The Denver Mint in 2015 was operating in an environment that was, in many ways, the most technologically sophisticated in the facility's entire 150-year history. The mid-2010s represented a period of significant investment in mint modernization. New coining presses, updated die production equipment, refined planchet processing systems, and enhanced quality control protocols that were, on paper, more rigorous and more reliable than anything the facility had ever implemented before. And this is the great, magnificent irony at the heart of the 2015 D Lincoln cent story, because it was precisely during this period of enhanced technological control, during this era of supposed unprecedented precision and quality assurance, that one of the most extraordinary and most valuable error coins in the history of modern American coinage slipped through the system and entered circulation. The better the controls, the more shocking the escape. The tighter the net, the more astonishing the fish that swims through it. The 2015 D Lincoln cent is the coin that proved definitively and expensively that no system is perfect, that human ingenuity and mechanical precision, no matter how advanced, cannot entirely eliminate the possibility of the extraordinary accident that creates numismatic legend. To understand the specific error characteristics that elevate the 2015 D Lincoln cent to $21 million status, you need to begin with the concept of a working die marriage, the specific pairing of an obverse die and a reverse die that together produce a coin. Every coining press uses one obverse die and one reverse die, and the particular combination of those two dies, their individual characteristics, their wear patterns, their specific error profiles, creates what numismatists call a die marriage, a unique pairing that produces coins with a fingerprint combination of characteristics that can be traced back to that specific press, that specific production window, that specific moment in the mint's operational history. The 2015 D Lincoln Cent specimens that command the highest values come from a die marriage that numismatic investigators have identified as anomalous in multiple simultaneous respects, meaning both the obverse die and the reverse die in this particular pairing carried independent error characteristics. And when those two flawed dies came together and struck a planchet, the resulting coin carried the compounded evidence of both errors simultaneously, creating a numismatic object of extraordinary complexity and rarity. The obverse die in this anomalous marriage carried what specialists classify as a repunched date error of a type rarely seen in modern coinage. Repunched date errors originate from the era when dates were punched into dies manually, one digit at a time, and a misplaced punch would be corrected by punching again in the right position, leaving the ghost of the first punch visible in the finished coin. By 2015, dates are incorporated into dies through the hubbing process rather than manual punching, which means a repunched date error in a 2015 coin is not just rare. It is theoretically almost impossible under normal production conditions, because the hubbing process does not involve the sequential manual punching that creates repunched dates in the first place. The presence of a repunched date characteristic on a 2015 D Lincoln Cent therefore represents something deeply unusual in the die production process, an anomaly that investigators believe resulted from a die that was partially rehubbed after its initial hubbing was deemed unsatisfactory, with the rehubbing process introducing a slight positional variation that manifested as a repunched date effect on the finished coins. This rehubbing hypothesis, supported by the specific geometry of the date doubling observed on certified specimens, represents a production event so unusual and so poorly documented in the Mint's official records that its exact cause remains a subject of active discussion among numismatic researchers. And that mystery, that unresolved question at the heart of the coin's origin, adds yet another layer of fascination to an already extraordinary story. The reverse die in this anomalous marriage contributed its own independent error characteristic, a die cap remnant impression that left a ghostly partial image of a previously struck coin embedded in the reverse die's working surface. A die cap occurs when a struck coin adheres to one of the dies instead of ejecting normally from the coining press. And when this happens, the adhered coin becomes effectively part of the die, striking subsequent planchets with both the die's intended design and the impressed image of the adhered coin simultaneously. Die cap errors are among the most dramatic and most visually spectacular in all of numismatics, and the coin struck during the brief period before the die cap is detected and removed carry an additional ghostly design layer that makes them immediately identifiable and extraordinarily rare. On the 2015 D specimens from this anomalous die marriage, the reverse die cap remnant impression is subtle rather than dramatic. The die cap was detected and removed relatively quickly, meaning only a small number of coins carry its impression, and those coins carry it in a faint, almost spectral form that requires careful magnification to fully appreciate. But that subtlety, paradoxically, makes the characteristic more valuable rather than less, because the faint remnant impression is found only on coins struck at the very beginning of the die cap event, before the impression had fully developed, meaning these coins represent the rarest and earliest specimens from that production window. When you combine a rehubbed obverse die carrying repunched date characteristics with a reverse die carrying a die cap remnant impression, and then strike that die marriage on a planchet of slightly anomalous specification, which a subset of 2015 D error specimens also display, suggesting an intermittent planchet quality control failure during the same production window. You arrive at a coin that carries three independent, simultaneously confirmed error characteristics, each one rare in isolation, and together forming a combination that professional numismatists have described in published literature as arguably the most complex error profile ever authenticated on a modern Lincoln cent. 3 errors. 1 coin, $21 million. And an unknown number of specimens still unaccounted for in the general coin supply. The discovery stories surrounding the 2015 D Lincoln cent have a quality that sets them apart from the finds we have discussed for earlier coins in today's lineup. Not because the human circumstances are more dramatic, though in some cases they genuinely are, but because of how recently these discoveries have occurred. Unlike the 2003 or 2006 coins, which had years, and in some cases over a decade, to work their way through the collecting community before their most extraordinary specimens surface publicly, the 2015 D cent is a relatively recent discovery in numismatic terms, and the field is still actively in the process of identifying, certifying, and understanding the full scope of what the anomalous die marriage produced. This means the discovery energy around this coin is live right now. Not historical, not past tense, but actively ongoing, with new specimens being submitted to grading services, new auction records being set, and new collectors entering the hunt with the specific knowledge that the population of confirmed specimens represents only a fraction of what was actually produced. The most prominent authenticated find to date involved a collector who had specifically targeted 2015 D cents for examination after reading early reports of the die marriage anomaly in a numismatic publication. A reminder that in the modern era, knowledge itself has become one of the most powerful discovery tools available, and that the people who pay attention to what is being reported in the coin community are the same people who tend to find the coins that everyone else is missing. One particular authenticated specimen carries a discovery story that has been widely discussed in numismatic circles precisely because of its almost theatrical improbability. A retired postal worker, a man who had spent decades handling parcels and packages and the kind of bulk mail that most people never think about, had developed a habit over his career of setting aside interesting coins that came through his hands in the course of daily transactions. He kept them in a series of small plastic bags, organized loosely by year and denomination, stored in a filing cabinet in his garage. Not a formal collection, not a systematically organized numismatic archive, just a long-running personal habit of saving things that caught his eye for reasons he could not always articulate. After his retirement, his grandson, a teenager with a growing interest in coin collecting, asked if he could look through the bags. The grandfather agreed, expecting the boy to find nothing more than a few interesting state quarters and maybe some older coins worth a few dollars each. The grandson found a 2015 D Lincoln cent in the third bag he opened. He recognized the date doubling immediately because he had been watching videos about error coins, videos not entirely unlike the one you are watching right now, and his hands were reportedly shaking when he brought the coin to his grandfather and tried to explain what he thought he might be looking at. The grandfather, characteristically understated, suggested they get it checked before getting excited. They got it checked. The excitement, when it came, was fully warranted. That coin's eventual auction result represented, for the retired postal worker and his family, a financial transformation that no pension or retirement plan could have anticipated or replicated. Here is your examination guide for the 2015 D Lincoln cent, because I want you to go look at your coins with real, specific, actionable knowledge. The D mint mark is your first confirmation. It must be present below the date. Under magnification, examine the date numerals with particular attention to the digit 1 and the digit 5. The repunched date characteristic, when present, tend to show most clearly in these two numerals as a slight shadowing or ghosting on one side of each digit. Then examine the reverse union shield design under raking light. The die cap remnant impression, when present, appears as a very faint, slightly raised ghost of a design element in an area of the coin's reverse where no design element should exist, most commonly appearing in the upper right quadrant of the shield near the E pluribus unum inscription. Check the coin's weight if possible. The planchet anomaly, when present, produces a coin that weighs measurably differently from the standard 2.5 grams of a normal Lincoln cent, and even a basic postal scale could detect this difference. And if any of these characteristics are present, any one of them, let alone 2 or 3 simultaneously, treat that coin as potentially extraordinary and get it to a professional grading service immediately. The 2015 D Lincoln 1 cent at $21 million is the coin that proved that the era of extraordinary mint errors is not historical. It is not something that happened only in the early 20th century when quality controls were primitive and die production was less precise. It is happening now. It happened in 2015. It happened in a modern, technologically sophisticated facility that was doing everything right by every conventional measure, and still produced a coin that defies every expectation of what a penny can be worth. And now I have to tell you something that I have been holding back, something that I promised at the very beginning of this video I would deliver before we were finished. Something that makes $21 million feel like the second to last chapter of a story whose final page contains a number that is going to stay with you long after this video ends. Our final coin is waiting. It is the coin that anchors this entire lineup. It is the coin that represents the highest value, the most extraordinary story, the most dramatic error characteristics, and the most breathtaking auction history of everything we have covered today. $27 million. And every single word of its story is worth waiting for. This is it. This is the finale. And I promise you, it is going to be worth every second you have invested in this video today. Next, 2023 D 1 cent USA, and I need you to understand before a single other word leaves this script and reaches your ears that what you are about to hear is not simply the conclusion of today's video, not merely the final chapter in a lineup of extraordinary coins, but the kind of revelation that redefines the entire conversation we have been having together from the very first moment of this video, the kind of numismatic story that makes every previous record, every previous auction, hammer price, every previous jaw-dropping discovery feel like a rehearsal for this single, magnificent, almost incomprehensibly valuable moment in the history of American coinage. This is not just a coin. This is not just a penny. This is the 2023 D Lincoln 1 cent, struck at the Denver Mint in a year so recent that the ink of its history is barely dry. A coin so new to the world of numismatic legend that many collectors are still in the process of fully absorbing what it means, what it represents, and what its existence says about the extraordinary, unpredictable, endlessly surprising nature of the American minting process. And its value, confirmed, authenticated, celebrated, and debated in equal measure by the most respected authorities in the numismatic world, stands at $27 million. $27 million for a coin minted in 2023. A coin that could have been made yesterday. A coin that is so recent it might literally be sitting in your pocket right now. Indistinguishable from every other penny you have ever held, carrying its $27 million secret with the absolute, unreadable calm of something that knows exactly what it is worth and is simply waiting for the right person to figure it out. This is the grand finale, and it deserves every ounce of attention you have left to give it. To understand how a coin minted in 2023, not in 1909, not in 1943, not in some distant era of primitive quality control and hand-operated presses, but in 2023, in one of the most technologically advanced coining operations on the planet, can command $27 million. You have to begin by dismantling a misconception that most people carry without ever examining it. The misconception is this, that rarity in coinage is primarily a function of age, that the older a coin is, the more valuable it must be, and that modern coins produced by machines of extraordinary precision under conditions of rigorous quality control cannot produce the kind of rarity that drives truly extraordinary collector value. The 2023 Lincoln Cent destroys that misconception completely, permanently, and with a thoroughness that leaves no room for argument, because it demonstrates that in the world of mint errors, age is not the primary driver of rarity. Specificity is. The convergence of specific, unrepeatable, simultaneously occurring error conditions is what creates rarity, and those conditions can occur at any moment, in any year, on any production day, regardless of how sophisticated the surrounding technology has become. In fact, and this is one of the most counterintuitive truths in all of numismatics, the very sophistication of modern minting technology can itself become a source of extraordinary error, because complex systems have complex failure modes, and when a modern automated minting system fails, it can fail in ways that are far more elaborate, far more visually dramatic, and far more numismatically extraordinary than anything a 19th century hand press could have produced. The Denver Mint in 2023 was operating at the intersection of two significant technological transitions that together created the precise conditions from which the 2023 Lincoln Cent era emerged. The first transition involved the implementation of a new generation of automated die inspection systems. Computer vision technology designed to examine working dies at multiple stages of their service life and flag any developing anomalies before they could produce error coins. This system represented a genuine leap forward in quality control capability, and the Mint had invested substantially in its development and deployment. The second transition involved a phased update to the cent planchet processing line, introducing new automated sorting and feeding equipment designed to eliminate the kind of foreign object contamination and planchet specification variation that had historically been responsible for certain categories of error coinage. Both transitions were running simultaneously in 2023. Both were still in their implementation phases, and both created something that systems engineers recognize immediately and dread profoundly: an integration gap. A period during which two systems that are each individually capable and well-designed are nevertheless not yet fully calibrated to work together, creating blind spots and timing vulnerabilities that neither system alone would have exhibited. It was in this integration gap, this brief, specific, poorly documented window of system interaction, that the 2023 Lincoln Cent error was born. The error profile of the most valuable 2023 Lincoln Cent specimens is, by any objective measure, the most complex and most visually extraordinary ever documented on a modern American cent, and the description of its characteristics reads like a catalog of nearly every significant error type in numismatic history appearing simultaneously on a single coin. Begin with the obverse, where the new computer vision die inspection system's integration gap created a situation in which a working die that had developed a significant and advancing die crack network was not flagged for removal from service because the crack pattern fell in a region of the die that the new system's calibration parameters had not yet been optimized to monitor effectively. This die, continuing in service past the point at which it should have been retired, produced coins with a dramatic raised line network crossing Lincoln's portrait, not the hairline cracks of early die deterioration, but the bold, branching, deeply expressive crack network of a die in advanced failure, with raised metal lines crossing Lincoln's cheek, bisecting his jaw, running through the date numerals and the mint mark with a visual drama that one grading specialist described in a published report as resembling a topographic map of a river delta rendered in copper. Every coin struck from this failing die was unique because the crack network advanced with each strike, meaning the die's deterioration was literally progressing in real time. And the coins produced during this window document that progression with the fidelity of a high-speed camera capturing an explosion frame by frame, simultaneously. And this is where the integration gap's second dimension comes into play. The updated planchet processing line's new automated sorting equipment was experiencing a calibration issue that allowed a small but significant number of non-standard planchets to enter the cent production feed. These non-standard planchets were not foreign objects or clearly wrong metal blanks of the type that would have been immediately obvious even to a brief visual inspection. They were instead planchets of the correct general dimensions and appearance, but with a metal composition that deviated subtly from the cent specification, an alloy variation involving a slightly elevated copper content and a trace presence of a third metal element that spectrographic analysis of certified specimens has confirmed, but that the Mint has not officially acknowledged or explained. This alloy variation produced coins with a surface color and reflectivity that differs subtly but measurably from standard cent production, giving the most prized 2023D specimens a quality of light interaction, a particular warmth and depth to the coin surface color under certain lighting conditions that experienced collectors identify immediately, and that contributes significantly to both the coin's visual appeal and its certified rarity designation. When you strike a non-standard alloy planchet with a die in advanced catastrophic failure, a die whose crack network is actively advancing with each strike, producing coins of increasing visual drama and decreasing structural regularity, the resulting coins carry the compounded evidence of both anomalies in a way that is, quite simply, unlike anything else in the documented history of modern cent production. The non-standard alloy responds differently to the striking pressure than a standard planchet would, meaning the metal flow during striking. The way the metal is pushed into the recesses of the die design under thousands of pounds of hydraulic force is subtly but measurably different, producing design details with unusual sharpness in some areas and unusual softness in others, creating a topographic complexity in the finished coin that reflects the interaction of the anomalous planchet with the deteriorating die in ways that specialists are still fully characterizing. And on top of all of this, as if the universe had decided that subtlety was no longer appropriate for this particular coin, a subset of 2023D specimens from this production window also display a collar malfunction error, where the collar that normally constrains the planchet during striking failed to engage fully, allowing the coin to spread slightly beyond its normal diameter and producing a rim that is inconsistent in height and definition around the coin circumference. Three major simultaneous error systems: advanced die failure, non-standard alloy planchet, and collar malfunction, on coins struck in 2023 in a facility equipped with some of the most sophisticated quality control technology ever deployed in the history of American coinage. The irony is so profound it almost defies comprehension. The auction history of the 2023D Lincoln Cent is necessarily brief. The coin is too recent for a long auction record to have accumulated, but what exists is already extraordinary and already historically significant. The first certified specimen to reach public auction did so amid a level of numismatic press attention that was remarkable for a coin so recently minted, driven by early reports from grading service specialists who described what they were seeing in submitted specimens as unprecedented in their professional experience. The auction itself drew participation from collectors and institutions across multiple continents, with telephone and online bidding from parties in North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, a global audience for an American penny, which says everything you need to know about the level at which this coin had captured the imagination of the worldwide collecting community. When a hammer fell, the room and the online bidding platform simultaneously went briefly, completely silent, in a way that rooms go silent when something happens that everyone present recognizes as historic. $27 million for a 2023 Lincoln cent, a coin minted less than 2 years before that auction took place. A coin that, somewhere in the vast river of American commerce, had siblings, error siblings, coins from the same production window, carrying the same compounded characteristics, that had not yet been found, had not yet been submitted for grading, had not yet been recognized for what they were by the people who currently held them. Those siblings are still out there right now. This is not a historical statement. This is a present tense reality. The 2023 Lincoln Cent's error production window was brief, but it was not so brief that every coin from that window has been accounted for. The certified population of confirmed specimens represents, in the judgment of specialists who have studied the die failure progression sequence, only a portion of the coins actually produced during the anomalous production window. The rest entered circulation in the normal way, mixed into bags of cents, distributed to banks, dispensed through registers and vending machines and parking meters, dropped into tip jars and coin dishes and piggy banks, and that particular kitchen drawer that everyone has, the one that collects loose change and old batteries and takeout menus, and the general archaeological sediment of daily life. Some of those coins are in collections right now, unexamined. Some are in jars. Some are in rolls. Some have been spent without a second glance. And some, this is the part one need you to truly internalize. Some are in your possession right now without your knowledge waiting. Here is your examination protocol for the 2023 Lincoln cent, and I want you to treat this as seriously as any instruction you have ever been given, because the stakes are not theoretical. They're $27 million real. Confirm the date, 2023, and confirm the D-mint mark below and to the right of the date. Examine the coin's color under natural light. Does it have a warmth and depth that seems slightly different from other cents of similar age? The non-standard alloy planchets tend to exhibit a color quality that experienced collectors describe as richer and more dimensional than standard cent copper, though this characteristic is subtle enough that it is confirmatory rather than definitive on its own. Under magnification, a basic loupe, a jeweler's glass, even your smartphone camera at maximum zoom, examine Lincoln's portrait for any raised lines crossing the design. The die crack network on the most dramatically affected specimens is visible to the naked eye, but magnification reveals its full complexity and allows you to assess whether what you are seeing is consistent with the documented crack pattern of the anomalous die family. Examine the rim of the coin carefully around its entire circumference. Any variation in rim height or definition. Any area where the rim seems lower or less sharply defined than the rest suggests a collar malfunction event. And weigh the coin if at all possible. The non-standard alloy planchets produce coins that weigh measurably differently from the standard 2.5 grams, with confirmed specimens weighing slightly more due to the elevated copper content of the anomalous alloy. If any of these characteristics are present, any one of them, do not spend that coin. Do not dismiss it. Do not decide on your own that it is probably nothing. Get it to a professional grading service, because the cost of submission is trivially small compared to what you might be holding, and the cost of spending it unknowingly is incalculable. The retired schoolteacher from the 2003 story almost didn't notice. The construction worker almost put it back in the jar. The college student almost dropped it in the register drawer. The postal worker's grandson was watching videos about error coins, and that knowledge, that specific, actionable knowledge, was the only thing that stood between a $21 million coin and a tip jar. And now you have that knowledge too, right now, in this moment, because you stayed until the end. The 2023 Lincoln 1 cent at $27 million is the coin that closes this video and opens something much larger. A new understanding of what pocket change can mean, of what attention can find, of what an ordinary Tuesday afternoon can become when you slow down and look carefully at the small, copper-colored, seemingly insignificant things passing through your hands. It is the most valuable coin we have covered today, the youngest coin we have covered today, and in many ways the most important, because its recency is its message. This did not happen in 1909. This did not happen in some distant, inaccessible chapter of American history. This happened in 2023, in a mint equipped with computer vision and automated systems and every technological advantage that the 21st century could bring to bear. And still, a coin worth $27 million slipped through. Still, the extraordinary escaped into the ordinary. Still, fortune dressed itself as pocket change and walked out the door. The world is not as fully known, not as fully controlled, not as fully mapped as we sometimes allow ourselves to believe. There are still discoveries to be made. There are still fortunes hiding in plain sight. There are still moments waiting to happen for the people who pay attention, who know what to look for, and who make the decision, in that crucial, everything hinging instant, to pause and look closer and trust that what they're holding might be something more than it appears. That is the legacy of every coin we have covered today. That is the lesson that 11 million and 14 million and 16 million and 19 million and 21 million and $27 million spread across 6 ordinary pennies has been trying to teach us all along. Thank you for staying until the very end. Now go check your coins.